Hello, 5th graders. Today we're going to go over order of operations, how to multiply money, how to subtract fractions, and how to add fractions. So for the first section we're going to go over is order of operations, and it says solve using PEMDAS. On the right side over here, I wrote down what PEMDAS stands for. So we're going to go over number 2 using this PEMDAS. So number 2, it says 15 divided by 5 minus 2. So PEMDAS is an acronym that determines the order in which you should solve the problems, solve the operations. So it goes from top to bottom. So if you see a parentheses first, you're going to do parentheses, and then exponents, and then multiplication, and then division, and then addition, and then subtraction. So number 2, I'm just going to circle the operations involved in the problem. So we see a division sign and we see a subtraction sign. So now I'm just going to mark it over here. We have a division sign and a subtraction sign. So we know that the order goes from top to bottom. So that means we do division first and we do subtraction second. So now I'm going to divide it first. 15 divided by 5, we know that is 3. And I'm going to do 3 minus 2. So now we do subtraction, which we get 1. So our answer for number 2 should be 1. So when doing this problem, you should be making sure that you do division first instead of subtraction. You should be following the PEMDAS order. If you have done subtraction first, you will get a whole different answer that's incorrect. So make sure to follow the order. So for the second section we're going to go over is multiplying money. So it says find the product, and we're just going to go over number 2. So it says $4.45 times 6. So multiplying money is just basically multiplying. So for now, I'm just going to ignore the dollar sign for now. I'm going to add that later. So now we're just going to multiply decimals like we usually do. 4.45 times 6. Now I'm just going to multiply it like this, 6 times 5, 6 times 4, and then 6 times 4 to end it off. So 6 times 5 is 30, so I'm going to put the 3 over here and 0 down here. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3, which is 27. Bring the 7 down here, 2 up there. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 2, which is 26. So this isn't our final answer. You got to remember that we have a decimal point that we have to add. So in order to do that, we look at the first number over here, and we see that the decimal point was moved 2 times to the left, so I'm going to write 2 over here. As for this, there is no decimal point, or there is, but it's technically at the all the way in the end, so I'm just going to write 0. And we're going to add these two, 2 plus 0 is 2, and then we're going to move the decimal 2 times to the left for your final answer. So now with the decimal, you should get 26.70. Now, you can't forget that we're multiplying money, so we have to add the decimal, so we have to add the dollar sign, I'm sorry. So your final answer should be $26.70. And that's it. There's nothing special about the dollar sign, it's like we just place it at the end. So for the third section we're going to go over is how to subtract fractions. It says find the difference, and we're going to go over number 1 and number 3 together. So number 1, it says 2/3. I'm just going to rewrite over here. 2/3 minus 1/3. Now when subtracting fractions, you got to always make sure they have a common denominator. So number 1, we see that the denominator of the first fraction is 3, and the denominator of the second fraction is also 3, which means they do have a common denominator. So if they have a common denominator, the common denominator is going to be the denominator of the final fraction. It's going to be the denominator of the fraction. And then now we're just going to be subtracting the numerators like this. So we are going to be doing 2 minus 1, and we know that as 1. So our final answer for number 1 should be 1/3. Now that was pretty easy, but I'm going to do another case where we don't have a common denominator, and I'm going to teach you how to find the common denominator. So we have 3/4 minus 2/3. As you can tell, they do not have a common denominator. One has a denominator of 4, the other has a denominator of 3. Now how do we find the common denominator? Well, to do that, we have to find the least common multiple of 4 and 3. So in order, least common multiple means you're going to find the multiples for each number and find what's the least common. So now I'm going to show you how to do that. So multiples of 4 include 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 20, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot more. There's an infinity amount, but I'm just going to stop right there. So now next we have 3, 7, 6, 9, 12, 15, and I'm sure there's a lot more. Now, in the least common multiple, we know that the word least. And we also notice least common. So now we're going to look at all these multiples and find the common multiples. So we see that we have a common multiple of 12, 12. Now, it says least common multiple, and 12 is the least common multiple. There's no number less than 12 that they have in common. So your LCM of 4 and 3 will be 12. Now that we know the LCM, now we're going to multiply both fractions in order to have their denominator equal to 12. So in order to do that, you have to multiply 3 to the denominator, or 3/4. And if you do something to the denominator, you have to do it to the numerator. So 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. Now I'm going to do the same for 2/3. I'm going to get a denominator of 12. In order to do that, I'm going to multiply by 4 to the numerator and denominator. 4 times 2, 8, 12. Now we have our new fractions, 9/12 minus 8/12. And this time, these fractions have a common denominator of 12, so that's going to be your final answer, denominator. Now we're just doing 9 minus 8, which is 1. So your final answer for number 3 should be just 1/12. And that's it. So I gave you an instance where they have a common denominator and where they don't have a common denominator. So now for the last section we're going to go over is adding fractions. So adding fraction works the same way as subtracting fractions, except that you add the numerators instead of subtracting them. So I'm just going to go over one problem for adding fractions because it's very similar to subtracting fractions. So we have 1 over 2 plus 1/5. Now it's the same, we need a common denominator. Check if it does, and this one does not. It has different denominators, so we have to find the LCM, least common multiple, of 2 and 5. So in order to do that, I'm going to list the multiples first. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on. And 5 is 5, 10, 15, so on. Now we notice that the least common multiple for them is 10. There's no number lower than 10 that they have in common, so that is why your LCM is equal to 10. And that will mean we have to make both fractions have a denominator of 10. So half, in order to get a denominator of 10, we're going to multiply by 5 to both the numerator and denominator. So numerator should be 5 and 10. Now same for 1/5. I'm going to get a denominator of 10, so multiply by 2, and then it will be 2 over 10. Now we have our new fractions, 5 over 10 plus 2 over 10, and these fractions have now a common denominator of 10. So now this common denominator is going to be the denominator of your final answer, and now we just have to add 5 plus 2 to get your numerator. So your final answer for number 1 should be 7 over 10. And that's it for today.